And yeah, um, just to a quick note disclaimer before we get into discussion. Uh, as most of you know, like some of the topics that we discuss like throughout the meeting can be like sensitive. So if you feel that like you need to like turn your camera off or like take time away, like step away from the meeting to take a breather, like feel free to do so. Um, it Self-care is super important, which brings us into group introductions. And so we can get to know each other before we start chatting. um, we're gonna do name, pronouns, and then what you do for self-care, which Stephanie came up with this one because many of us are feeling a bit under the weather recently. So what are some things that you guys do to like take care of yourself when you're not feeling too well? And then once you're done with your introduction, you're gonna pick somebody else on the screen to introduce themselves. So I'll go first. My name is Morgan. I use she, her pronouns. Something I do for self-care. Um, I am a crocheter and I love to just, my mind goes blank when I am sitting there crocheting. And so that's super fun for me just to like um, chill out. And then also I love making things for people, and it always like makes me feel better when I'm like putting love into a gift for somebody. So I'm gonna pass it to Stephanie just because, yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie, one of the Hardcover Hotties admin, and I use she, they pronouns. One of the things that I do for self-care, I take a really long shower and then just sit and do like face masks and like all that stuff. The very basic version of what people think self-care is what I do. And I'm gonna pass it on to Veronica.
Hey everyone, these are my first words of the entire day. So hey. um my name's Veronica. Nice to meet you guys that I haven't met yet. My pronouns are she, her, and for self-care, recently what's been hitting is like taking like a hot bubble bath and just like either reading or like listening to music, just taking the time to like be, and it's been so nice. So that's my current self-care thing, but at all times making sure I'm getting enough sleep is like the number one thing. I'm gonna go Charles.
Hi everyone, I'm Charles. I use he, him pronouns. All right. My self-care honesty zone. I play a lot of the video game Overwatch, but between rounds recently, I've been adding in the will to change and like reading it. So it's like I will popcorn it to Lauren.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also a Hardcover Hotties admin, and I'm so excited that everyone's here to discuss this book today. For self-care, I also am a fan of like the basic self-care stuff. I love a face mask. I love recently, I haven't had a night routine like at any point in my life, but recently I've started like doing one, and I have this lavender essential oil spray that I spray on my pillow and my teddy bear. And then I light a scented candle and I read a book before I go to bed, or like I also drink chamomile tea every night, and that's been like life-changing. It's like so awesome. But yeah, I'm gonna popcorn it to Douglas.
Did you say to me? Okay. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is being a little weird, but hey everyone. My name is Douglas. I use he, him pronouns. And for self-care, I think I've been I've been telling my friends this that I've been trying to like unplug like when I'm eating and stuff like that. So like I'll like try and like focus on like what I'm doing in the moment and like get rid of like looking at my phone or like listening to music and kind of just be in the moment. So yeah. I'll oh okay. I did come in a little bit late, so I'm trying to see who hasn't gone, but I'll popcorn it to um mm, Ocean. Have you gone? Would you want to go? If Ocean's there. But if Ocean's not there,
Oh, wait, yeah. Wait, what are you guys doing? I just joined in because I like low-key have not slept all day. What's up?
Hi, Ocean.
I
We're
missed the
doing
intro.
introductions right now.
Oh, hi.
Do your name, pronouns, and then what your favorite like form of self-care is.
Nice. Hi, I'm Ocean. I use they, them pronouns. And wow, I that quickly almost forgot what you just said. Okay, and then my favorite form of self-care is recently it's just been like honestly taking a shower with like my eucalyptus and lavender pouring over me has been really nice.
Awesome. And then you can popcorn it to somebody else like on the screen.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let me see. Damn, Douglas, you picked on me like as soon as I got on here. That was so funny. Hi. Okay, let's see. Aaliyah, have you gone yet? Okay, hi, popcorn yak to you.
Hi guys, sorry. My cats were being crazy, so I had to handle them. My name's Aaliyah. I use she, her pronouns. Self-care, I would say probably going to yoga. I feel like it's kind of like a basic one, but it's always helpful and it feels great. So who didn't go? Did everyone else go? Morgan and Steph, did you all go? Yes. Lauren? Oh my God. Mackie, what did you go? Okay.
Hi, I'm Mackie. I use she, her pronouns. And I have been, for the first time in my life, consistently journaling lately. So that's a really awesome way to kind of get everything out of my head. And yeah, just been focused on presence as well, like Douglas said, like just being in the moment. So good stuff. Nicole and Nick.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I use she, they pronouns, and my self-care is either crocheting or playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild on my Switch. I'm gonna popcorn it to my buddy Nick.
Will do. I'm Nick. I use he, him pronouns. I think my form of self-care is eating candy or going outside, but it's been too cold to go outside, so it's mainly just eating candy. True. I'm gonna popcorn it to Ellen.
You guys hear me? My name is Ellen. I'm also a Hardcover Hotties admin. I use they, she pronouns. I've been journaling a lot recently and also making playlists. I love making playlists. I think that's like one of my main forms of self-care. I'm gonna popcorn into Ian, my buddy Ian.
Hello everyone, I'm Ian. I use he, him pronouns. This is my first meeting with y'all, so that's very exciting. And for self-care, I like to do some stretching, go on a walk, anything to get the blood flowing, kind of get out of my head, you know, kind of out there. I'm going to popcorn it to anything. Hi everyone, I'm Mitch. I use he, him pronouns. This is also my first meeting. Very exciting. I have been drinking a lot of tea lately and watching a movie or something like that before I go to bed. So yeah.
Has Bryn gone? I'm gonna popcorn it to Bryn if they have one.
Hi guys, I'm Bryn. I use he, they pronouns, and I was just sick with COVID this week. And so for self-care, I basically took hella vitamins, like so many. You know, those little like vitamin C gummies. I kind of consider those a meal at this point. I have had so many of them. And then I also sleep a lot, I guess. And water. Kind of the classics, I suppose. Oh shit, I forgot the second half of this. Okay, can I popcorn it over to Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael. I use he, him pronouns. Usually what I do for self-care is I go to the gym. I haven't been able to do that. So I've been like sleeping in on the weekends till like 10. Yeah, that's about what I do. So I'm gonna popcorn over to Miles.
I'm Miles, and I use the he series pronouns, and my self-care would be playing soccer. Just makes me forget about whatever's going on. So, I'll popcorn it to Nia.
Hi guys. Sorry, I'm on my iPad and I'm like multitasking so poorly, but I'm Nia. I use she, her pronouns. And then for self-care, I like to put on music and just like move my body. And I also like to drink a lot of teas. I'm gonna popcorn to Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. Am I in like the main screen? I'm not good with Zoom at all. I'm just gonna roll with it. So this is also my first meeting. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm pumped to be here. I do a lot for self-care regularly, but I've gone through a lot of growth and development personally in the last several years. So most recently, what I've been doing for self-care is being super duper me. The jeans and the black shirts and the knee-high boots. It's a very classic me style, and I've been wearing that almost daily. I've been listening to jazz and blues music. Just the unapologetic, hardcore, deepest to my bones version of me. And I like it a lot. I think we still have Kat to go, right? I'd like to popcorn it to Kat. This Kat's not there. There's Kat.
Hey Kat, we see you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, there we go.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
My name is Kat. This is also my first meeting. My pronouns are she and her. For self-care, I'm really creative, so I like to take time to make art, play guitar, write poetry, that sort of stuff. Glad to be here.
Yay. I think that is everyone. Yeah. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Just like some Zoom tips, Jennifer, I know you said you were newer, but if you go to like the top right corner of the screen, you can put the everybody's like videos into gallery mode, and that way you can see everyone's faces if you'd like to do that. And then also on the bottom of your screen, there is like an option to do like closed captions. So if anybody wants to do that as well, that is there in case you need it. I think that's all we have. So I'm gonna like pass it over to Stephanie so we can get started with discussion.
Okay, everybody. Again, thank you so much for coming this morning. If you have to eat your breakfast, drink your coffee, go ahead. We're not going to judge you. I have some potatoes over here that I'm going to be eating while you guys are talking. So, but we're here to talk about The Will to Change, which has been such an enriching book, I would say. A lot that I thought I definitely like knew about, and then Bell Hooks, as always, just reframed it in a way that made me rethink my whole life. But yeah, so I just wanted to start off with like your guys' opinion of the book, and just even like the introduction, why Bell Hooks decided to write this book from a feminist perspective, and writing this book as a woman. What do you guys see as like her intention, and just like the way that she interjects a lot of like her personal narratives in the different themes that we see in the chapters? Also, anyone can feel free to just jump in whenever and like unmute.
If I remember, like from the introduction of the first chapter, she like talks about how she feels like in a lot of feminist discussions, people want to like overthrow patriarchy, but they don't want to involve men. That she feels like men are like an essential component. It's like it's a mistake to assume that only women are hurt by patriarchy, but it's also men, even though they also benefit from it occasionally.
Yeah, I really agree with Michael. I feel like overall this book has been really formative for me, and I'm glad I'm reading it now rather than later. For me, like the term she uses, I don't know if like imperialist, white supremacist, patriarchy culture, just like hearing those words has really given me a good like a foundation just to think about a lot of concepts regarding patriarchy and society. So I really loved the book.
Going off of that, I think I really like the introduction in terms of how she focuses on like, I guess like the patriarchy as like a system in terms of it being like a relationship. So it's not just, I mean, of course, we should focus on the people who are oppressed, but then to make sure that there's like a solution or like options and actual like changes, we look at it as a whole and see how it affects everybody, including the oppressors. And then I guess in a way, even though who wants to actually have to take the time to understand people who are oppressing others, I think that by understanding, I guess, the oppressors and the oppressed will allow for us to like move forward in terms of making changes and making sure that we understand the system.
I thought overall, I do like the book. I love the book, and I'm very happy that I read it. Overall, it did kind of piss me off a lot. And the times that made me angriest, I found that if I twisted the voice, the narration to more like a satire, it became a lot funnier to read. But I think the part that really angers me when I sat down and tried to figure out why I'm so angered by it is that the most powerful parts are when she talks about her abusive father. And I imagine like the book was written to try to understand where he's coming from, understand why he did what he was doing, which kind of, I don't know, feels a little bit like self-gaslighting, or maybe like a recipe to Stockholm syndrome. And that was a hard pill to swallow.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brent.
I don't know. I really liked the book. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm distracted. I was doing laundry, but I really liked the book. I thought that it was, I think that she has a really good point about, you know, including men in like the discussion of feminism, and also how like we should also look at how the patriarchy affects men. And honestly, when I read it, well, I listened to it on audiobook, I didn't feel so much like she was writing it as more of an explanation as to her father's like treatment of her. I don't think that she necessarily liked her father or agreed with how he treated her, but I think that I feel like for most people, your father is a very good example and a very personal interaction that you have with the patriarchy. Like, you know, I have 2 sisters and a mom and a dad. So if I want to look at the patriarchy from a man's perspective, I feel like that closest perspective for me is my father. And so I think that's more why she was using that as a reference, you know. I felt like she wasn't super necessarily emotional one way or the other when explaining it. I felt like she was very like, I guess kind of like pulled back and observational about it. But I liked especially the introduction, because I think that she really speaks to feminists about something that they need to hear about, something that all of us need to hear about, of like, you know, if we need to include men in this discussion because the patriarchy is also harming men. And I feel like looking at it from the perspective of like, you know, as feminists, obviously we acknowledge how the patriarchy negatively affects us and how we need to, you know, push forward to make sure that women have more of like an equal footing and find like equality in many spaces where the patriarchy has not given that to us. But I think that it's also really important to acknowledge how that the patriarchy does not support men in that sense of like emotional well-being, which I think is the theme of this book. I don't think she's by any means saying like, oh, you know, men don't benefit from the patriarchy, but kind of that like, you know, there are many ways that it also harms men.
I think going back to Jennifer's point, I was really like just looking at the cover of the book. One of the things that pissed me off was just sorry, the general perspective that a lot of the times I feel like when people approach this book firsthand, maybe without really knowing that much about bell hooks and like what her past works like are about, it looks kind of like can come off like a romantic guide to like understanding men, which is what I really did not want to be for like anyone to really think that that's what I was investing my time in. And obviously like she does she does like talk about the more like romantic aspects, but I really appreciated both like how Bryn was saying, how right away she like brought it back to a root that we can all relate to. And she does often like bring up not only the effects of patriarchy in like a 2-parent household growing up with like a patriarchal like father, but what how patriarchy manifests in motherhood. And that was also something that just ended up being like very relatable, whether it was like my own experience with like my parents, grandparents, or just like close relationships that I've had like growing up, where I've seen like how patriarchy does like affect a family in like every single level. So I really appreciated breaking it down from fathers, mothers, children, and like how they navigate growing up under patriarchy and like how it like influences the way they carry themselves. Yeah, it really just centered it back to something that like ended up being more relatable to me. And with, again, like with what Jennifer was saying about almost making like excuses, I also noticed that she kept bringing up like her past relationships and talking about possibly why the people in the past relationships acted the way they did, maybe like in a bit of more of an abusive way. And that did make me have like just a moment of reflection, because I was like, oh, is she like justifying it? But going back to what Bryn was saying again, like I thought about it, I was like, maybe this is more of like an objective standpoint, and it did make me like reflect back on my past relationships, like regardless of however like things unfolded. I did just want to take like, I was pushed to take more of like an objective stance and be like, what could it have been, without trying to like denote the way that it genuinely like impacted me or any other woman that like I've known in my life, like these same like concepts. So yeah, but it's been a very challenging book for me, because some of these ideas are things that like I didn't like want to think about, or just like haven't had the time to like really reflect on, when there's like so many things like trying to capture your attention like within the feminist like movement. Okay, that's all I was gonna say.
I'm really glad that you said that there were some things that you didn't want to think about, because like when I was approaching this book, there were some things that like I didn't want to like think about, because I think I was kind of like stuck in my ways about like not including men in feminism. So she kind of like called me out on that, because like I was kind of like I was kind of like a man hater. And I was like, they're not gonna like help us fix it, like they're not gonna like listen or whatever. So she kind of like called me out on that. And I like started to realize how important it truly is like to involve men in dismantling patriarchy. But also I haven't finished the book, so I didn't plan on speaking, but then you guys brought up like family and parenthood and stuff like that, because that was something that I was thinking about a lot, like reading the book, how much like fathers and mothers can like enforce patriarchy in a household. And then obviously when their children like grow up, that's like that shapes their behavior for like the rest of their life. Pretty much. So I've been thinking about the ways that I can like apply that to my life, because I'm gonna be a social worker, and I currently work with kids, and so I've been thinking about like ways that if I were to work with families, like how to like apply a feminist perspective to that, in like helping with like family issues. But yeah, I just thought that was really interesting what everyone was saying about parenthood and families. Oh, I forgot to mention something also, in case you guys are interested. I got this book from Bookspace, and it's called Woke Parenting. I'm gonna read it. But it's like, it's kind of I think it's about like how to raise feminist kids and like not enforce the patriarchy with your children. So I thought that was interesting, and I thought I would share that book. But
I'll go. I love what everyone has said about the book. Holy moly, so insightful. Sorry if I'm just laying in bed, y'all. I literally have been working all day, so I'm still kind of whatever. But I was like, I'm hopping on here, I'm not missing it. First of all, the book was not what I expected it to be like at all, but literally from like the introduction, I was like, oh damn, like this gonna be life changing. And also like Nicole, I kind of I wouldn't say I'm like a man hater, but I definitely feel the same as you, where I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I really want to read this and like care about men changing and stuff, like to be honest, because I don't know, I feel like the beginning of it, especially when she was talking about how everyone is like afraid of men, from like children to women, but especially women are like so afraid to talk about it. That was really like, oh wow. And also just knowing, like, I already know how collectively like we all are, um I wouldn't say terrified of men, because that's not really it. They're just, anyways, that's my man hating kind of coming in. But anyhow, from other points about the book, I was thinking about as well when she was relating to like her father, and how I'd never taken the opportunity to also think about like my relationship with my dad, because he was kind of one of those dad that was like really like there physically, like worked at home, but was so absent like emotionally, and like never talked. And the only way I feel like there was ever communication with him was when he needed to come and be like, oh, I'm the punisher, like, and doing like the spankings or like the grounding and stuff. And so that was, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a good relationship with him. So it was kind of cool, not cool, but it was kind of nice to read from Bell Hooks's perspective, and to see that someone like her had been through some similar experiences as well, you know. I kind of was feeling the same way that Jennifer was saying, where I was kind of like, damn, I don't know if I really want to hear her like sympathizing with her dad about this, because I feel like I still hold a lot of resentment and anger towards like my dad from being such a patriarchal dad. And I definitely don't know like that's what it was then, but now I'm like, oh wow, my eyes have been opening. But also, even before I finished the book, like halfway through, um like I don't mind talking about patriarchy, but I feel like a lot of random men actually were coming up to me and talking to me about patriarchy, because I don't mind talking about like racism or like white supremacy. Like I'll make anyone uncomfortable and talk about it. But I don't talk about patriarchy that much particularly. But weirdly enough, I've had like a couple men come up to me and actually start talking about how the patriarchy has like fucked them over too, and how they have like so many wounds that they're still like in their 30s or 40s trying to heal from. And so I was like, oh my god, this book is like coming in my life at the perfect timing, so I can actually be able to have conversations with these men about like the way that you know, the patriarchy affects them too. And another really good point, sorry I'm talking so much, but another really good point I liked about the book was when she was talking about how everyone kind of like the violence of the patriarchy, and how you can think of how the many ways men are violent, like whether they're super abusive in their relationship or just like with porn in general. I know that's like a word sometimes that makes people really uncomfortable, but that's something I like to think about a lot, because like no shame or anything, because I know it's something that everyone has to work through. If you watch, if you have a problem, like not like have a problem, have an addiction, like I understand why they make it the way it is. But I love how deep she really got into the violence of like pornography in general, and not just like hetero like porn, even if it's like male on male, how she talked about like, yeah, it's still super violent. There's always like has to be a dom or a submissive. So good. And it just gave me even more like insights to be able to have conversations with people when I talk to them about porn, especially men, because I feel like a lot of guys make excuses as to why they like need porn and watch it. And I understand like why, because a lot of the times little like not little boys, like teenage boys first introduction to like sex is porn, and so they already start like over sexualizing the female body, pretty much like being able to look up whatever they want to look up. So they've never even maybe seen a naked woman, and all they know is like they can watch and see whatever the heck they want to see the female's body do, you know? And then when they get an interaction with like a real life woman, they're like, oh, I want you to like do a backflip like on my penis or something. And it's like, that's not realistic. Okay, that's just a performance in porn. But last thing that I will say as well about that, what I really liked and how she made me think a lot was how I maybe enact my own violence, like via or through the patriarchy, you know, because she was talking about obviously men, they do the violence of the patriarchy or whatnot, but then everyone in some way kind of has it too, like the whole dom submissive thing. And so I was like, oh man, I wonder who people, animals, like anyone who's been in my life that's a little less like, I guess, less powerful than me, quote unquote. And so I was like, have I ever like, I mean, I'm sure I have because I'm human, but you know what I mean? Like, how do I like, how am I violent because of the patriarchy towards people who have less power than me. Sorry, my phone just said like lower power mode, but that's pretty much it. That really made me think a lot about like, I was like, oh my God, how do I like enable this as well, you know? So
going off of what Ocean said, I think that's a really good point at the end about like, oh, how do I enable it? Because I know I remember reading the part where she's talking about like how like for example, be your dad who comes in and like disciplines you, and then after that, after you're boo-hoo-hooing, crying, whatever, whatnot, you have your mom come in and it's like, well, you shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z, and like that wouldn't have made them mad and all that stuff. And so, I mean, I think when I looked at that at first, I was like, oh, damn, it's really everybody. It's really everybody that's included in that. And so sometimes I think even in myself, because like I said, I'm not perfect. I've done things that have probably like given up to the patriarchy, but in my mind, I'm always like, okay, so if this is how I am, or if this is how I've acted, what can I do currently to like change my mindset? And I think I've been like, I don't know, I think I mean, I end up talking a lot. I have a lot of friends who are like women, and I like kind of talk about myself and my experiences and stuff like that. But I feel like, how do we all kind of like change our mindsets like day by day, and also acknowledge the fact that like the patriarchy does like affect us all like negatively, and that like there are still, even though there's still some shitty people out there, so like we also have to acknowledge that as well.
Yeah, I definitely like agree with well what everyone has said, but I think that part of the reason why like this book was such a difficult read is because it prompted like so much self-reflection, and like in all like I know like Stephanie brought this up like when we were talking about it like a couple weeks ago, but like she is like asking feminists to like center men, which is a really difficult like conversation for like and but and then asking people to like reflect on how they like do enable like patriarchal violence. I think that what Charles brought up earlier, with having like kind of one of the most like important takeaways for me was that she armed us with like the vocabulary to describe the violence and the to describe men. And it like in a lot of cases it isn't like men that are the problem, but it's like patriarchy. And so like and I think she does like talk about it early on, like both can be true at the same time, like men can be the problem, but like patriarchy is the thing that is like perpetuating like a lot of these like difficulties that we do see, and which I think that was like a really important like thing. I Ocean like touched on this too, but I think it's also been like really interesting to think about this from like a queer perspective as well. And like patriarchy does like find its way in like every part of our world, like every like type of like relationships, and yeah, just yeah, literally. If for those of you who haven't read this book, it's a Carmen Maria Machado's like memoir, and she talks about her experience. It's like creative nonfiction, so the writing is like really interesting, but she talks about like her experience in an abusive lesbian relationship, and like it's just really crazy. But yeah, like from like patriarchy exists like even in like lesbian relationships, which is like crazy. Going with what Morgan was saying, especially in the beginning, talking about naming and how important that is. This was a conversation that like I've had with friends before, especially like reading this book. One of the things that Bell Hooks really called me out on was how closely I was tying men in general, the patriarchy, and the way that like manifests for myself is really, I do have like a decent amount of like male friends, but in the way like I contextualize it at times is that when I start feeling like safe around these people and they become like people that I'm seeing like daily, they kind of just like stopped being men from like my point of view. I'd be like, oh, well, like, okay, you know what I mean? They're still men. But I would not even think about it. I wouldn't be like, oh, my male friend and my female friends. I'll just be like my friends. And now I'm like rethinking that because I'm like, okay, what is it that's making me see like keep tying like men to patriarchy so intensely to where even when I'm building like healthy, like non-patriarchal, non-toxic masculinity filled like friendships with men, I'm completely like just bringing down a level of like how valuable and like enriching that is for me by excluding the part that they're still men. Like I do want to take more time to like be really appreciative for like the male friendships and relationships that I have that like are actually like healthy and have like been able to like be like rewarding and like safe for me, and understanding that the thing that's allowing me to like get to that place is like their own efforts and intentions that are like separating them from what I've experienced in the past is like patriarchy and like the harmful effects of that.
I'm really glad you said that because that's kind of what I was trying to say. Like I would say like I hate men, but really I was like tying so closely together men and patriarchy. When I was saying like I hate men, what I really meant is like I hate patriarchy, or I hate the patriarchy. And so I totally agree with you. Like the men in my life, I would like not even in a gender way, but like in a patriarchal sense, like they would not be men to me anymore. Like, but they're still men. But yeah, I'm really glad you said that because it's really true. And I think what Morgan said, like even with non-men, we can like see expressions of patriarchy. And so that I think that kind of just like further proves my point that I don't mean like I hate men, I hate patriarchy because it can exist even in non-men. Yeah.
What?
For me, my biggest takeaway was that like if you well as a man, it's like you can't build healthy self-esteem when you're like portraying this like patriarchal self, and that like kind of really hit me in terms of like how my life has gone so far. But I like really disliked her solutions and like the way she framed them because like in the work chapter especially, I feel like her like solution of like the love ethic and just like being loving towards each other, like that's not going to solve like the work dynamic she described. Like it's how do I explain it? It's like I feel like capitalism makes the work system that way. So like you're not like I just don't see how the love ethic is going to make like societal change. And I feel like she framed it that way.
I agree that like love probably isn't like the only thing that will put an end to this, but I feel like for me, at least personally in my life, after reading this book, I feel like it's like I feel like it's important to love masculinity and like love like just loving men and like loving the things that make them men, I guess. Like I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that love can go really far and like kind of like untying like the heart of patriarchy's cause in men. Like I think about like my little brother, just loving him and like loving the man that he is and not like excluding the maleness from him when I like think about the love that I have. If that makes sense.
Oh, you can go ahead, Ocean.
Oh no, I've already talked. You go ahead.
I was gonna say I took a lot away from the work chapter. She kind of talks about how there's like a disconnectedness between the household and the workplace, and how when men go into work, it gives them the opportunity to kind of disconnect themselves from their feelings and kind of like an obligation to connect with other people. And me hearing this, I really appreciated it. She just like incorporate more of that connection building in your workplace can make kind of any work feel more enriching. I really did. I took a lot away from that.
I also really liked the work chapter. I think it was because it was the chapter that I guess could relate to the most because my dad works all the time. Like just all the time. He owns his own business and he goes to work in the morning and then he comes home and he sits at the same spot on the couch and he works on his computer until like 2 a.m. I've never gone to bed after my dad. And then he wakes up and he leaves and he goes to work and he comes home and he does work. And I feel like that chapter was really important because maybe it's because I could see it as like maybe a little helpful for my dad in terms of like seeking more connection with his loved ones, because like the quote that like I wrote a couple notes, she said like work stands in the way of love for most men in this capitalist nation. And she talks a lot about the effects of capitalism. And I agree with you, Miles. I liked your point that like, you know, just love is not really gonna provide that, you know, kind of significant societal shift that we would need to have like maybe more time at home or less of like that like grind that we have from capitalism. But I think that it's a really important starting point because I think that for a lot of men, that intense work ethic is not necessarily viewed as a problem, either just in general or what Bell Hooks talks about, like an emotional problem. Like my dad is, he loves, like not necessarily loves work, but he doesn't see like a problem with it. Like if you were like, Dad, you spend so much time at work, you hardly know what's going on at home. He would be like, what do you mean? I'm working all the time because I love you guys. And like, you know, that's true. That's true. You know, like that is true. But, you know, I think that that chapter really brought a lot of attention to something that like think should be talked about more. Cause like, I feel like for me, it's always been really hard to talk to my dad about that because it's true. Like he literally like, he will not know what's going on. Like he lives there in that house, but I'm like, dude, you have no clue what's happening right now. And it's because he works all the time. And, you know, he could work less. Like we are very privileged, our family, he does not have to work as much as he does. He could work less. And I think that that was a really important conversation that was brought about in that chapter. And as much as I don't think that, you know, just love is going to change it, because also there are many families where that's not an option, whether or not you want to work so much or not, you might not have that option. But I think it was just a good starting point of getting maybe like a shift of mindset, because I feel like the more people who have that like mindset shift, the more that change is likely to occur.
That was really well said.
My bad. Would
No,
you
go
like
ahead.
to go, Douglas?
No, go ahead, Nick.
To piggyback off of what Bryn was saying, as like firsthand experience of working like a manly job or whatever, and we have like super long hours, there's just such a disconnect from my coworkers and like their home lives, and they think about is just getting up and getting ready for work. And it's just crazy to me because I get home and I try to keep the balance between like, okay, this is work time, and then I get to, enjoy seeing my friends and my loved ones and stuff. And they're just more worried about like, well, I got to make money. And they get back and they're just like, don't really care about anything that's going on. And it just repeats. And I just feel like the generational like gap between me and some of my older coworkers is just, I feel like there's such a difference in culture that it's just shocking to me because even like if I'm sorry, I'm like losing my mind, but um like even if I would like talk to them about oh, do you like care about your friends? Do you give them a hug every once in a while? They'd probably laugh at me and be like, you stupid or whatever. And it's just insane. Like, I don't understand how you can't care for, someone who's not a woman or female presenting if you're a man. It's just shocking to me.
Going a little bit off of what Nick said, I was just thinking like, I think the chapter kind of scared me just a little bit because that's literally going to be me working like every day 6 months from now, just work, 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 work. And I think at that time too, I know, Mackie. I think I'll also be like living by myself too. So I'm like, how do I still maintain like this emotionally like present, like, I guess, persona or idea? And it made me think a little bit about like what Nick said, because I mean, I bet you maybe possibly at some point when those people were like younger, they probably were like, oh, okay, I'm not going to be that person who like only focuses on like getting by. So in my mind, I'm like, how do I prevent myself from being that person when I'm literally going into corporate America where I'm going to be working 40 hours a week? And I think, I know, making change at like the personal level is like the start before you start making like, I guess, culture shifts. But I think in myself, I'm like, what are actions like that I take to stop myself from being that person?
Um, I only got like halfway through the book. I don't know if I finished. I think I started like the work chapter, didn't finish it. Like I feel like sometimes it's not that like men don't want to know what's going on at home or with like their friends. Like, and I feel like when they work, they kind of just expect that they will be informed, or that like these relationships will like somehow maintain themselves. Like my dad, he works a lot, but for a while, my youngest brother was like afraid to go near him to talk to him, and he got really upset by it. He's kind of like, why does he want to talk to me? Why is he afraid? Why is he shy? And I just kind of feel like he kind of expected that like relationship was would just manifest randomly, and that like he should know that I do care about it, even though I don't like talk to him. I feel like sometimes that's the issue with friends. They just kind of like expect things to just magically appear without putting the work in it.
When I read that, I was like, yikes, that's been me. Like the disconnectedness, you go into work and then you come home from work, you're tired, the book talks about how a lot of men just expect women to do all the emotional caretaking and kind of because manifesting that relationship. And I realized that a lot of times in my personal life, I'm no, I'm not, I need to do more work in building my relationships. I've never been taught how to put work into a relationship, how to care and how to do all these sorts of things. It wasn't until meeting my lovely friends that I learned like what it takes to love other people. That's something I was never taught how to do or value.
I'm interested to see what other people have to say about this because my parents when I was younger both worked like a lot and they worked like roughly the same amount, but my dad like still had the mindset that like work work work, and then when I get home my mom, like his wife, will take care of the like emotional like family stuff. So it's kind of like they were both doing the whole work thing, but like it was still expected that my mom was gonna like do the work for putting in like making sure what's going on at home and like making connections with the kids and stuff like that. And I'm glad that you said that, Charles, because I think that maybe just the way that my dad was raised, he didn't know that that was expected of him, or he expected like my mom to do it or like the woman in the household to do it, probably because that's what his dad did. So yeah, Ocean, you go, because I realized that I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I love hearing other people's thoughts about it. Okay, Loki, what I have to say goes along with what the past 5 people who have talked have said something about, but I actually am really stuck on what Bren said, because about just like working parents or like specifically fathers, because this is what it's kind of about. But I was like, damn, I guess what really makes a father, because y'all know the stories of like super rich parents who have like the nannies that pretty much are the parents that raise the kids, and the kids end up building like emotional attachments to the nannies or whoever and not the parents. And so I'm like, okay, well, more about towards like a father. I'm like, if a father is, I guess, always working, mind you, because it's what they've been taught they're supposed to be doing, you know, be the financial like taker or whatever. So I'm like, if they're always absent and not putting in the emotional like what emotional connections that need to come with like a family, or think like who is it, Michael, yes, you talking about how like your dad was like, why is he not like talking to me, and how he like just expected this relationship to just manifest out of thin air. I really liked how you said that, because I'm like, I know for me, maybe I'm just a little bit of like a hard ass, but I'm like, I don't know, even though my dad was home and he worked from home a lot, he was just so absent that I'm like, what does that even mean to me? Like, what if you, if by you being my father is just you financially taking care of me or providing the funds, like other people can do that as well, technically speaking, you know? So it's like, I don't know, I'm thinking a lot about what like the idea of fatherhood in general and what that actually entails completely, because for some people they do have that connection, like emotional connection with their dads, and other people like the dad is just like there, you know? And even like in the book when Bell Hooks was talking about in like lesbian relationships or something, or how a lot of people will be afraid for like little boys to be raised in like a lesbian household or whatnot because the father figure isn't in, or even how she talked about her experiences with like her mother being like, well, at least he like paid the bills and stuff like that, he like provides for us, you should be grateful for that. And it's like, okay, if that's all you really have to give, then like, are you really my father then, or are you just like my financial supporter right now, for real? But that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Sorry. Everyone, everyone's been making really interesting points, and I'm like thinking a lot because I also have a dad who works a lot. But I saw this video about kin keeping, which is like a traditionally you know, woman's role, woman's work, and it's just like the emotional labor that goes into kind of keeping these connections with family and friends and like people outside of, and just like within the immediate family, but like outside of it too. Like I know in my like my mom will text my dad's father for him, which is just like crazy. Like she's doing like she's making that connection. And also like I like was telling her about this, but yeah, so like that emotional labor, and I also like really had to reflect on like a horrible thing that I didn't want to reflect on, which is that I'm willing to forgive my dad faster for his emotional shortcomings than my mom, because my dad is the primary like breadwinner. And I'll be like, you know, he works so much, like I can't ask for the same thing as him that I can for my mom. But it's like my mom is constantly working. It just looks different and doesn't bring in the same amount of money. But yeah, like if it made me think of like, I don't know, crying in H Mart when her mom passes away and she's like left with her father, and they go to Korea together. And it's just like, I don't know, stuff like that is really interesting because it makes me think like, yeah, if my mom wasn't part of my family, we would fall apart. Like we would lose our connections to each other and outside the family. But yeah, I just think that's a really interesting thing and something really hard to reconcile with, because like that's a way I think I'm upholding patriarchy, is by like being more lenient on my dad because of like the money that he provides for us, which is like sad.
I think that for me, looking at this, I would want to maybe look into more ways to try to bridge that gap between, like, that emotional gap maybe between like fathers and their children, or just generally men, because I think that like her point is like, okay, there's like a huge emotional disconnect here, you know okay, so like what should we do about it? My dad's not going to read this book. He hasn't read a book in years. He doesn't have time for a book because he works so much. So he will not read this book. So I think that maybe this is even more than like necessarily this work chapter, but I will want to know like if any of you guys have, I don't know, ideas or thoughts on like how to bring this type of like mentality and like attitude shift of like, let's all be emotional. Let's all try to work on ourselves and self-care outside of like, just like reading the book, which I feel like is going to be a little bit harder to convince people to do outside of this lovely book club.
I really like what Mackie said about how she's helping to reinforce the patriarchy by being more lenient on her father, when actually it sounds like she should be more lenient on her mother. I think that that just shows as a simple example of how we each are so indoctrinated to uphold the patriarchy. So with this new wave feminism and truly understanding that it's about equality and it's not just about women having more power, but it's about everyone having equal power, and therefore it is no power, it's just cooperation, it's being human, it's being compassionate. Every day more women are waking up. Every day you still meet women who are like, no, women should be in the kitchen all the time. I can't handle that. But at the same time, just like we have those kinds of women, we also have men who also refuse to give up the patriarchy because of that power. So it's mind-blowing to me that men, women, and everyone has the ability to wake up and to see people as humans, but there are still so many men who aren't, which would be the will to change. And I can't help but think that part of the reason that there are so many men who are not waking up is because that means that they won't have the power that they do now. A power that, as Bell Hooks very eloquently reiterates over and over, is toxic to them too. But it's like maybe they think that the pros outweigh the cons, that they don't have to give the effort of being of that emotional labor. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just concerning that there's just so many men who still won't.
Honestly, after reading the book, shout out to Bell Hooks, because she did make me for the first time in a long time think about like not even rekindling, but I'm like I wonder why I'm so terrified to actually have a conversation with my father, you know? Again, he was like not there at all, even though he was always sitting there, not there at all. But I was really, I don't know, I feel like for me personally, it was a huge, small but huge little blip of like growth for me in my own personal experience, you know, even though I'm not going to have a conversation with him right now. But for the first time in a really long time, I was like, damn, I actually could sit down with this man and try to educate him about some of this stuff, you know. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to like be educating this grown ass man about how to be a better dad. So there's that. So
I think that like what everybody's saying is really interesting about like the overworking dad and how like emotionally present he can be in a family. Because I feel like growing up, my experience was like the opposite. Like my mom worked a lot and my dad was like the one that took us to school. I remember we would always go out to like Wendy's and get Frosties or like get cheese sticks like every Friday. And like so much of like my childhood was like spent like talking with him, getting advice from him, to the point where I mirrored him so aggressively. And like I've noticed that like now that I'm in college and I'm like independent, that he like, I don't know, like we just butt heads like so much and our relationship is just not what it used to be. And I try to like talk to him about like this whole like concept of control and like how he as a father like kind of projects like his own insecurities and like his own pressures that he feels from the patriarchy and capitalism onto me. And I think that that like is layered and has more to say about like parents and stuff. But I don't know, I thought about that. And I also thought about how growing up, when I would like try to talk to my dad about like feminist issues or like ways that he was like being sexist, he would automatically like talk about how, I'm trying to figure out how to frame this so it's not like invalidating him, but because it's like basically he would make himself the victim. And on one hand, I'm just like, are you serious? But then on the other hand, I feel like, especially him being like a Black man, I don't really understand like all the pressures that he feels and like all the stress that he like goes through on a daily basis, just like I do as a Black woman. And I feel like Bell Hooks is saying like that he doesn't have this outlet to like process these emotions or feel comfortable enough to do so, that it just like eats away at him in like the same ways that it eats away at me, but I feel like more comfortable like sharing those. So I don't know, like I just think about that a lot, especially I don't know if anybody who's seen it, but After Sun like immediately called my dad and was like bawling because it was just, that movie is a lot. But I don't know, I feel like the pressures of just like being a parent, specifically a dad, like I just, oh Lord, it's just, it's not for me personally, but I'm just like, damn, like grateful. Like, even if we have our ups and downs, I'm just like, okay, like we're all learning. We're gonna, I don't know. Oh, sorry, last thing, and then I'm done. I haven't finished the book and I haven't read all about love. But like when I think about love and like having love for other people, I think a lot about like patience. And so that's been something that like grounds me a lot when I think about men, is like, I don't know. I think that we have a long ways to go, but I'm just like, let me just try to be like patient with you. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to hold you accountable, but I'm just like, I mean, it's like, it's hard out here. It's hard. So.
Oh, go ahead,
Oh
Ocean.
no, Aaliyah, you go ahead.
After hearing like everybody talk, something that I kept thinking about, like a common thread, is kind of the age gap. Like I feel like all of our parents are probably kind of boomers or like a little bit younger than that. At least my mom's like 56. So, but I feel like when I address issues with her, like stuff about, you know, emotional, and like I feel like our connection emotionally got better once I had more independence as well. I kind of like have a more equal relationship and dynamic, I guess, if that makes sense. But I feel like definitely
there's a sort of like work all the time, and there's different boundaries, and like I don't know, I feel like everybody like our age, or at least in this meeting, we're also much more open to at least just like talking about how we feel and engaging with those conversations. And like when I've tried to do that, I've had a lot of really hard conversations like with my mom, and I think like helped her realize a lot of things about herself and like maybe her work ethic or like her relationship with my dad and like all stuff like that. And I think like there's definitely no harm sometimes in like, you know, initiating those sorts of relationships, like pushing that emotional boundary, like that we also participate in with our parents. And like I think it's a really worthwhile thing to try, as long as, you know, you're not putting yourself like in a harmful situation or anything. But yeah, that was just kind of my takeaway, because I feel like there's definitely like a common thread of there's like these weird boundaries in place, and I think a lot of it might be that age gap. Same with like grandparents. Like I'm not that close with my grandparents. Like I feel like there was a sort of distance that's always been there. And I've tried to establish like a connection, and I'm just not sure if it's going to be there. But I think also accepting that, and like just again like loving people for kind of who they are and where they're at, versus like expecting them to be in the same kind of like mindset and have the same perspective and education, just because it's a really different world. And that's not like for excuses, that's just kind of, I guess, what I've come to accept.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mackie.
Okay. I was just gonna say a little bit about what Jennifer said really early on, and then what Ocean kind of reiterated with like having that hard conversation and like kind of like forgiving men, which is something I never want to do. But then I was like, oh, yeah, I need to do that to grow. Like, I just like whenever I reading this and All About Love, like I just really admire her forgiveness, and it's like not something that comes that easily to me. She is a Libra, obviously, and I'm an Aries. So, but yeah. So like, I just think like I think like her emphasis, and as you were talking about like the patience to like meet people where they're at and stuff. It's like, I don't know, it's difficult because, you know, I feel so strongly about these things, and I'm like, reading this book taught me so much, but it's also like a lot of it I felt it was kind of common sense, and like I don't know, I get kind of like resentful about people who don't really like quickly grab onto that, or like are defensive, or, you know, stuck in their ways a little bit. But like that is the key to kind of having those hard conversations with everyone, but specifically with men, and like I guess fathers more most specifically. So yeah, I don't know if that made sense. I have like cold brain, so I don't know what I'm saying, but I think the forgiveness aspect was something that was really interesting and important to me, and something that I know that I need to work on. And thanks, Bell Hooks.
I think for me, I feel like this conversation would just be like really hard. Not because like, oh, I don't think that like necessarily there'd be like a huge argument or anything, or I just couldn't talk to my dad about it. You know, I have a much better relationship with my dad than my mom, and overall he's like pretty solid dad, you know. But I feel like my dad's like view of what it means to be a dad is like just directly from the patriarchy, you know. And so like I don't know, how many of you guys as dads just like don't have friends? Like my dad like just doesn't have friends. He works every day. He doesn't like his job. Like he's told like he doesn't like his job. He went to school for like architecture, and he's like pretty artistic, but the kid sitting next to him was just like way better at it. Ended up being a famous architect, actually. So my dad probably would have been a fine architect. So he went into like finance, and now he does like tax returns all day, and he hates it. And he does it every single day. And he like he doesn't really have an emotional connection with his kids because he doesn't talk to them. And when I went to college, I had to like remind this man, you have to text me. I text you, you don't respond. You have to text me. Okay. Like, that's the only way we're going to communicate. It has to happen. And now he does. But it's like, I feel like this would just be such a sad conversation. Like, I don't want to make my dad that sad. Like, I feel like he's ignoring it right now, you know? Like, he doesn't have a therapist. Like, I don't want to be like, Dad, did you know that you don't have friends or any emotional connections, and that this is like kind of harming your life a lot? Like, that's not, I don't want to make the man sad. He's having a great life so far. Like, he's riding his wave. Like, I don't want to be like, buddy, you just say no. Cause like, I don't know. I feel like he would kind of be the prime example of what Bell Hooks is talking about, like, of a man to have this conversation with, you know, like, he is somebody who's like he's kind, he's loving, and he would be respectful enough to listen to me. Like, that's the type of person that you can have a conversation with about something like this. But I don't, like, what's he gonna do? He's like 56. Like, what, he's gonna like get on Bumble Friend? Like, what's this man gonna do?
So
No.
I want to, oh, sorry. I just
Oh,
want to
go
say,
ahead.
I like totally feel that. And like over COVID, I had that kind of conversation with my mom that was like really hard. And I probably shouldn't have, but I definitely delivered her some truths that I perceived about her. And like, honestly, I think if you see all those amazing qualities like in your dad and like love him for who he is, I think there's no better person to like be his friend than his child. And like maybe ask him to like get dinner. And like clearly you already established a connection by being like, can you just text me? And it worked. And like to me, that's like a true sign of like love and like promise. And so I think you need to give yourself more credit and the connection that you built with your dad.
Going off of what Bryn said, I was also like, oh my gosh, I have a pretty good relationship with my dad too. And I was like, do I really want to have this conversation with him? And he said that he'll read the book too. So I guess we're eventually going to have the conversation. But in my mind, I'm like, this is going to be so awkward because now we have to sit here and like talk about, I guess, your experiences and possibly, I guess, your like childhood experiences. And then also, I guess, talk about me and then my experiences. And I feel like I don't know if I come off as like, I come off like I show my emotions or whatnot, but I feel like in my mind too, I'm also, and this book also made me realize I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not as emotional as I think I am. And I may be a little bit, not necessarily closed off, but I guess closed off just in terms, probably just for my sake, because if I have to actually like go through and think about everything, I'm probably going to be very like annoyed. But I think that having that conversation would be awkward anyways, but I guess isn't any awkward conversation supposed to be awkward if you're supposed to like make change? So we will see how this goes.
I have a question that anyone can answer. It's a statement and a question because we have been talking a lot about like fathers and stuff, which is obviously we all have dads. So, well, okay, that was kind of like messed up. We don't obviously all have dads, but you get what I mean. A lot of us have like, I guess, father figures in our lives, but I personally don't have any younger brothers. But I was gonna say to people who have younger siblings, especially like male siblings or people who identify as males, because a part of the book she was talking about how, I don't know if it was her son personally or a friend of a son's that she was relating the story to, but she was talking about how like, oh yeah, he used to like, you know, play with Barbies, and then like some other group of boys saw him playing with Barbies, and just by like the look they gave him, like the boy who was playing with the Barbies immediately knew like, oof, I don't know what the icy look was, but I know not to play with Barbies anymore. Or even with like painting your nails, and how like, oh, he used to, oh no, it was about her friend or whatever. Her friend who was trying to be really hard to like, you know, fight the patriarchy or whatnot. So like her son would paint his nails, and then he'd go to school and the kids at school would like make fun of him for it. And there was only a certain point where like the mom of this specific child was able to like go to school or do this or whatnot and be like, look at these cool ass men, like rock stars who paint their nails. Like that's dope as hell. But I was thinking about, I know from like, I don't know what generation we're all really a part of, but I know we're all making so much progress where we are, especially in how people like present themselves. Because what really is like feminine or like masculine, especially like the way you appear. Like really, is painting your nails like really a girl's thing? It's just a patriarchy. We all know it's a patriarchy. But I was thinking about like people who do have younger siblings and stuff, how, because I don't want to say like our dads are like a last cause, but I know a lot of us have been kind of saying like, oh, like how do we actually get these people to change? And so I kind of wanted to see, not like gear the conversation towards like the younger generation and stuff, but like how people, if you do have younger siblings, how you're trying to get them to like be less patriarchal and whatnot. And even so, if they themselves are trying to be less patriarchal, of course, and then like how outside groups of people, like, you know, like in school, like other boys in school and all this, and how like they start affecting like their self-expression as well. So if anyone has anything to say about that, like.
Ocean, I'm so happy you just brought that up because
Thank
I
you.
have a little brother and I think about this every time I go home because I feel like, and I'm so sorry to him, but I think he's getting worse like every day. And I know it's like my dad and like the pressures that my dad like is putting on him. And then just like the way that he compares himself to like other boys at school and like, it's just some of the stuff he says is just messy. I mean, it's just messy. And I'm just like, Shay, like, let's not do this. But then like when I get involved, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like the title, The Will to Change, is something that's like personal, like to the individual and like how, that's a really good question. I think he's 9 and about to be 10. Yeah, he's 9, about to turn 10. I think that that's like important. And I don't know. I'm trying not to overshare because also I'm like really caffeinated right now and like my brain is like going like woo, woo, woo. But I'm like perceived as like the kooky older sister. Like I'm the one that doesn't shave. Like I'm like the hippie. I'm the weirdo, the girl that got an eyebrow piercing. Like it's like all normal things in our generation. But like when I go home, they're like, "Are you okay?" So like when I try to have these conversations with him, I'm not really taken seriously. And I don't know if that's like a me thing and just like who I am and just like those values just like clashing. But I do think about this a lot and I don't know what to do because I get concerned that like he's gonna have to like experience so many of the pitfalls of patriarchy and just be like so hard on himself and like not be as happy as he could be. And it really does stress me out as an older sister. So if anybody else has advice.
Nia. Yeah. So I have an older brother and a younger brother. And like growing up, I think me and my older brother were attracted to more of the same things like toys and music and like different stuff like that, just like growing up. And we, I think, had a really good relationship with each other and with our mom. And my little brother was more attached to like my dad. And my little brother is into more typically like masculine things such as sports and I don't know, other things like that. And like he talks with my dad a lot. And then anytime that like me and my older brother would get in a fight with my dad about something such as this, like talking with him about patriarchy or just anything, something like that, and he would like respond really negatively, we would like find solace with each other. But my little brother, I think like because he's more attached to my dad, like agrees with my dad more. And especially when and I think this is kind of what you're saying, Nia, like when we went to college, my brother was just with my dad because my dad doesn't work anymore and like my mom is working all the time, so like he was literally just with my dad all the time. But in terms of like advice, I think my little brother, I love my little brother, he's great. But like I do notice things that he says that I'm like, oh. But like for me, I just try to connect with him in like any way possible and any common ground that we can have. So like I've showed him a lot of music that I like. I've showed him a lot of movies. This sounds like I'm like manipulating him, but like I try to connect with him on like stuff like that so that I think we can build more like trust and like I guess build more like rapport in our relationship so that like when I can talk to him about like harder things, it's like we kind of already have this like common ground and like trust there, if that makes sense. So like I've just been trying to bond with him as much as possible so that like when I do notice things that I feel like I can bring them up with him. And I was gonna say something else, but I forget. Oh, I think that he thinks I'm like the crazy older sister or whatever, but I think that like opening him into like my life more and like asking about his life and finding that common ground has made him think like more crazy good and not crazy bad. Like he's been like, oh, she's so fun, she's so cool. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I have like two younger brothers. Like with my youngest, like I do the same thing you guys do. Like I try to like connect with him. Like we have a pretty good connection. Like I try to do stuff he likes. And I don't know, like I'm not really concerned with my youngest, but I have like two. Like the youngest, he's fine. Like he's pretty, I don't know, he's like really weird for his age. Like he was complaining to me about how the US doesn't have like universal health care and that Bernie owns like 3 houses. Like the only concerning thing he's ever said is that he thinks uh gay people overuse like the rainbow flags. I have to talk to him about that. But otherwise, he's like pretty good. With my other brother who's like a year younger, we don't really talk about things. So like I don't know. I feel like so I don't really know his opinions on stuff. I don't know. But like this isn't like siblings with my cousins. If they say like misogynistic stuff, I just try to like I don't outright say like they're wrong, but like I try to like ask them to like defend their beliefs, to like try to make them see like why do you believe it doesn't even make sense? Like why is like in one case it's okay, but not in the other. You know what I'm saying?
I really liked how Bell Hooks describes growing up as like a young boy in patriarchal society as being isolating. And I know for me personally, just being in patriarchy has caused me to like deny lots of parts of myself that like express individuality and like uniqueness. Because masculinity is a performance, it's a prison. You just feel obligated and like at all times to conform to patriarchy in lots of different ways. Especially with like expressing emotions and being vulnerable to other people. So I think giving your younger siblings just like a space to be themselves and to express themselves can go a long way in building their self-confidence and just like who they are.
I just
I
have.
oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Okay. I yes, you were so right, Charles. Masculinity is for real a prison, but I was just thinking about how how everyone said about their dads and stuff. I kind of feel maybe emotionally privileged um because I know my dad's father was like a traditional, patriarchal father. But I know that my dad did not want to be like that. And um I know that like it's kind of the same. Like there's always some pressure, but I know that every time he wanted to hang out with us, he would like, he'd come over and he'd be like, "Do you what games do you guys play?" He'd always be trying to connect with us. Um, but connecting with that, my youngest sibling is trans femme. Um, and my parents have been really supportive of it. And I thought it was really, I don't know, because I don't think any time in their lives they've ever dealt with a situation like that until now. And I'm just really proud because not only my mom, but my dad especially, who is so supportive of everything they do. And I don't know, it just makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, the patriarchal ideals can be a prison, and it doesn't even have to be your parents. Um, you can get sucked into that from like online, and it's just crazy to me that I can see, other people struggling, and it wasn't like that for me. And I don't know, it just makes me emotional and stuff.
Sorry, I'm gonna ask Nick a direct question right now. Do you actually want to talk more about like it being online?
I can.
Like patriarchy online?
Yeah.
I just want to know more about it. If you want to talk about it.
Well, I mean, a lot of like, I guess entertainment and influences on younger kids now is through like YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. And a lot of the times it'll always be about, oh, like I'm super fit and you do all of this stuff and I pick up girls and stuff. And like it'll get in someone's head really fast and they'll start spouting that out, as they're walking around. And it's just they think it's a normal part of life. And it doesn't have to be like that. And it's just crazy to me that it can even happen just from like, unrestricted viewing of YouTube or something. And it'll just suck you right down the pipeline.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but I
No, it's
I
all right.
wanted I wanted to talk more about that, like with your experience growing up online, because I do see that in my younger brother, because he's a little gamer and like he loves watching YouTube and he loves watching like live streams of like gamers or whatever. And it's just really crazy thinking about how that is like real people that they're watching and they're really saying things and they're really taking it in. So it's like it's just like you would have a conversation with like your friend at school, but like for a little boy you're like literally observing how someone else is talking about women or talking about something like that, and like little boys can just like take that in without even realizing it.
If you're only in like that certain area of the like your internet or whatever too, it'll just envelop you in that and you'll be like, oh well, everyone thinks like this, so it must be right.
Especially with how algorithms work nowadays, because then it's just going to keep popping up that content.
It's a dangerous cycle.
Sorry to go on that little tangent, but that is something that really worries me about the younger generation of boys on YouTube and gaming and stuff.
Yeah, I know that we had some thoughts about it too, but Jennifer, I noticed that you unmuted before. Did you want to add in your thought?
Yeah, I actually don't have any younger brothers, but both of my sisters are raising boys. And there's a big, big difference between both of them. So one of my sisters has two boys. At this point, I don't know how old they are. They're sometime around 10, give or take a year. They're not twins. They're a couple years apart. The other one, her son is just 2 years old. So the reason I don't know how old the former two are is because I don't see them anymore. I can't handle seeing them. They're being raised so patriarchal that it's physically painful. I mean, like, in order to say hello to someone, they have been taught to tackle them to the ground in the biggest hug they can give. I've fallen down. A little 4-year-old practically gave me a concussion. It was literally painful. I tried to support them once when I found out that they were performing with the School of Rock, only to find one of my nephews singing an AC/DC song. The line goes, "Lock up your daughters, lock up your wife, lock up your back door and run for your life. They're talking about raping the women and girls in their families. And he's singing that. Everything that he's talking about is just mortifying. I can't handle it. And anytime that I try to share feminism and racial equality and the environment, they shoot me down like they need to explain to me how it actually works. One of the reasons that's important is because while my sister did obtain like a figurehead father figure for her boys, he's kind of an NPC. He doesn't really do much. She's she's basically the single mother that Bell Hooks talks about in her book, who's not just enforcing the patriarchy, but she's going overboard, and they're being trapped emotionally. They have to do certain things. They can't have these emotions. I mean, at this point, they're preteens. They have to have like all these hormones and very big expressive emotions that they want. But when I have seen them, they just kind of shuffle if they're not being aggressive, as if they're just doing everything that they can to trap all of this emotional energy inside of them. Meanwhile, my other nephew, the 2-year-old, my sister and her partner are very protective of who they bring around them. Anyone who encapsulates the patriarchy, like our other sister, is not permitted to be around her boy. Instead, I heard this conversation at a grocery store where he pointed at, someone's really gonna love this, a woman's armpit hair. And my sister said, "Isn't that beautiful?" She is really driving in that everybody is beautiful in their own ways. Everything that makes a person unique, hair color, skin color, even opinions, that is beautiful. It's something to learn more about. It's something to accept. It's something to experience. And it's something to help that little boy grow. So when it comes to raising the future of men, yeah, we're still going to be dealing with the patriarchy for quite some time, because there are people out there like the elder sister of the two, but there is hope. Like that 2-year-old boy who now thinks that armpit hair on women is beautiful.
You can go first.
Okay. So lots of awesome like ideas. One of the things that was really like coming to mind, especially talking about like media and going back to what Nick was saying, all the media representations that are there and like available for men to pick up from like a young age, that I've seen like my own, I don't have like younger siblings, but I have like younger cousins and just like young men in my life who I like am desperately like trying to put in the effort to like provide like insight to make them like good men. But it also, something I've been thinking about is just how everyone is very aware of like the amount of media that exists for men, and there's like an emphasis on like the music aspect of it. And like I know like Jennifer was literally just like quoting lyrics. Like music and all the media you take in is so like formative for young people. I know like it has been for me, but I think about like the flip side, the way that patriarchy has manifested itself for the media, like the feminist counteractive media created for women that I see and consume, that's like really evident in like female music, female empowerment music, female rap music, talking about the ideal man and how men are bums if they're not making this amount of money, like really putting down men and also elevating women, specifically like with like a financial tie to both. and just how harmful it can be for women to say like, oh, they do get like the point, oh my god, yeah, men shouldn't be treating women like this, so then let me go ahead and be 2 times as mean to all the men I encounter and like degrading um in order to like empower myself. And that made me like reflect a lot, because I'm a fan of all the popular music and like all those messages, but then I think about like what aspect of it is really empowering to me when it is so closely tied to capitalism, and what I can like, oh, I'm really mad at men, so I'm gonna work 10 times harder to make more money than them and be really pretty and do all this stuff and have the best this and this and that. And that's just who is that helping? Like I feel like on all ends it's like feeding into the same cycle, where going back to what Miles brought up like earlier in the meeting on like whether or not like love is what love like really can save like everything, that it was also something that was like a bit difficult for like me to really like take in, just because I do see how like all the systems are like intertwined, and seeing the own effort, sometimes like unmet effort that I've placed onto the men in my lives to just like have genuine conversations. And it does make me question like what accountability looks like. I try to take in what Mia brought up and what Jennifer was bringing up, like the juxtaposition of like having patience for men, but also being like really frustrated at the same time. I what if I knew that every single time I sat down with a man, the conversation would end with like a positive, like them actually like understanding and like fully listening and being prepared to like take in my points, then I would I would have them every day. I would like sit down every man and be like, let's talk, let's have this conversation. But that really just isn't a guarantee. And a lot of the times the person who's like paying and like the expense of that is like my own emotional labor. And just feeling bummed, like being like, damn, I just sat here for 2 hours, which is something like I have done with my dad, really breaking everything down, because I'm like, okay, let me just like really come at this from like you don't know anything, so let me help you. And then, well, okay, see, even the way I phrase that, like I know that that it's not that they don't know anything, but just like coming at it from like a very foundation based and trying to build up from there. But when I can't even get the foundation, that's when it's really hard, especially when it is like a young man, because that's when like you really want to work towards that. But let Morgan say what she wanted to say too.
Yeah, I have like a lot of thoughts. I definitely have been thinking a lot about like what you said with just feeling like and then also I think Mackie phrased it like pretty nicely, like there can be like a lot of like resentment and like frustration that comes about when we're all literally putting in so much work. Like we've read a whole ass book, we're sitting here like dissecting all of like all of the stuff, and like I think a lot of having like reflected on like my own like familial relationships like with men, and then also like romantic relationships with men, like my framework for loving men has been like constructed by people who don't have the will to change, one, and also who I think what I've like noticed is like one of my own like shortcomings is that like I think like the capacity that I like offer for loving men is like different than it is for like my relationships with like non-men. And I think that like my friendships with men in my life are like literally changing that for me. Like I'm seeing the way that like non-patriarchal masculinity can look in like everyday life, and that's been like really enriching, and like it's and so meaningful like to me. So like the men in my life who have like put in the work, I have like so much respect and like love and care for that. I think like just I've been like thinking a lot about like my own family, because my I like grew up with like a single mom for most of my life, and she like worked all the time, like traveled all the time, and like it was just me and her most of the time. And like I think growing up I was like, I don't have like a lot of like examples of like patriarchal parenting like in the household, but after reading this I've been like proven wrong and been able to like identify the ways that like motherhood has like or patriarchy has shown itself like in motherhood. And then I also think about like how my mom like got remarried 3 years ago to Bill, because everybody needed to know his name apparently. But yeah, Bill is there. And but he is like really awesome. And I think like just like the way that like it's been really cool to see the way that like gendered roles have been like have manifested or not manifested like in the household. They like work equal amounts, they share the burden of like cleaning and like of just like making meals for each other. But I think as like a child, like as their child, it's been like interesting to like reflect on the ways that like I have loved like my like stepdad, and or the ways that like he has loved me, because like we don't really talk about our relationship at all, but like the way that he like shows his love and care is like through like making me tofu when they make steak, or like doing like all of like just like the little things, or like my mom like or like like he just doesn't talk about his feelings at all. But I think that like throughout my childhood and like my upbringing, I've been like raised that like that emotional disconnect is like normalized, and like I don't have to necessarily put forth that effort to like build loving relationships with the men in my life, which I'm sorry I'm talking for so long. But I think that a lot of people like mention that, and I've been thinking a lot about like mental health and mental illness and like the gendered discrepancies like in like our world, especially like with mental health. And I'm glad that like Nia brought up After Sun, because my childhood looked very similar to that. My like dad passed away when I was 10, but before that, like a lot of my childhood was like watching him struggle like a lot, and seeing the way my like first glance like into the way that like family and friends like addressed mental illness was that. And it was like gendered, like it was like there was um like just a lack of care like shown. And then also like from his perspective, like I can imagine like difficulty like expressing those feelings, and like being able to like understand like his own experiences. And like patriarchy definitely has like shown itself like through the hundreds of thousands of like men and women who are like struggling, and the way that we like address care has been like gendered. And I've just been thinking about like how like I think it was Ocean who brought up the for those of us who have like little brothers, like how are we to like hold them accountable, or like help to raise them like in non-patriarchal ways. And I think like I think the criticisms that did come with like love as like a solution are like completely valid, and I definitely like recognize those and agree with those in many ways. but I think that like reformulating like our concepts for love, of love, and how we like extend care, or maybe this is just me, like how I extend care to like the men in my life, is like worth reimagining and like dissecting, because I don't think that has been something that I've been like able to reflect on. One, because it's like a difficult conversation to have and like really painful to like have that sort of like self-reflection and hold myself to a standard of like I, even though I've been hurt like by men in my life, like I still, not all men are bad, and all men still deserve care and love and like stuff like that. But yeah, and I think the question of like accountability that Stephanie brought up is like so important. And I think as we are like verging on 12 on noon time, I think a good question to like kind of like wrap things up with is maybe like, how do we keep the men in our life accountable, like our friends and our like particularly our friends, like when we see yeah, and then yeah.
Yes. So in the interest of time, if anyone has like final thoughts on that, or just like anything that you're really like itching to say, like please feel free to bring that up now. But yes, any final thoughts?
Well, I'll say that I think maybe one of the things that we should do is just share this book, because I think it was a really good dissection of masculinity in our culture, and I think even just becoming educated on the topic could be really life-changing for a lot of men. So that's just what I would say.
This has nothing to do with the book, but my cat is being very cute right now. And I wanted everybody to see he fell asleep. He's the cutest boy around. And that's all I have to say.
Do non-masculine, well, non-traditional masculine, whatever. Do non-masculine activities with your friends. It might take a little bit of convincing, but like, I'm like, oh, let's like make art or something. You're just like, what? And I'm like, come on, it'll be fun. And then they do it and they're like, oh, this is actually pretty awesome. Just stuff like that.
I feel like I have a brother who's like a Republican, and something I do with him, he's 20. I like ask him how he's feeling and how he's doing, and I try to get like a real answer out of him, which is hard, but I feel like if I ask enough. And another thing is, I think someone mentioned this before, like when they say some bullshit, like question them. Like don't say yes or no, don't fight, just be like, why? And like half the time he has nothing to say to me, and then I interject. So also establishing yourself as like the cool weird older sister and making them love you for who you are and then listen to you. And I will say he turns to me when he needs help with things or he needs advice, and even though it might not be as close as we could be, I think that it builds a lot of trust.
Everyone, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come to this meeting and then just talk about like very important things. It means so much. Yeah, y'all have the will to change, apparently. I'm gonna talk a bit more about the raffle, but feel free to like share your socials, what you're doing later, your letterbox, I don't know, but you could type in the chat, so we can all stay friends. But we're basically just gonna count people who like came in groups and put in like random generator and see who gets to win 2 copies of next month's book, which is going to be drum roll. Okay. Parable of the Storm by Octavia Butler. for our February book of the month.
Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month. Tell your friends. 2 of you will win this copy. Everyone else, you could pick it up from Bookspace. Okay, everyone has this book. Like every store ever is gonna have this book. So it should be easy. Get one for yourself and
somebody you love.
Someone you love and a man that you think needs to change. Yeah. But
also, if you guys haven't been to Parable Coffee Shop, which is like downtown, they also have I sent it, Bryn. They also have copies, which I think were provided by Bookspace, but that coffee shop is like named after Parable of the Soul. So that's a slay. Yeah, I think I'm super excited about this month because I think the media map, which we do every month, is going to be crazy, and just like talking about like other like media recommendations like parallel to the themes of this book are going to be really crazy. And I've never read anything by Octavia Butler before, so I'm super stoked to read with you guys.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Love you. Go change a man's life today. Whatever that means for you.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love Hardcover Hotties.
Yes.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.